Welcome to Buck What You Heard. This is Ken here, with joined by a couple colleagues that are going to be, going through some analysis of a great game that the Bucs had against the Lions this past weekend. Um, Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties. Never mind. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, you sound good.
So, okay, perfect. Yeah, it wasn't coming through here. And then from that result, we have a game to look forward to this upcoming weekend against the Broncos. But to start off with our two guests today, we have J Lo, who's part of Tones' podcast with the Buccateers. And then we got Michael Pless from Real Bucs Talk gracing us with his presence as well. Hopefully the doctor can, make the injury report a little bit less. But I think it's a lot better than what I think many of us feared. So just to lead us off here, J-Lo, would love to get your thoughts from the game.
Overall, I mean, that was just a competitive playoff atmosphere type of game. I mean, the way the team played together, with all these injuries going on. I mean, I was very impressed with the defense, how they kept them out of the end zone most of the game. That red zone defense was really strong. Being without some of our players and Vita Vea going down didn't help. But, these reserves, man. Bowles got these boys ready to play. I mean, this was probably marked on their calendar. This is a game that we had to go in there and just make a statement that we are a contender. Like you said, we're competing for a Super Bowl. We're not competing for a division. So, hats off to the team. Baker Mayfield's a dog. I mean, putting the team behind his back to help, lead a really strong win over a really good football team.
Great thoughts there. Plus, I know you were there, so
Mhm.
let us know kind of what that experience was like. I heard you also went to a Michigan game as well.
Mhm.
Let us know how that experience was, and also watching the Bucs win that game on Sunday.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, it's great to keep the road winning streak going. I went to 2 road games last year, and we won both of those, one in Minnesota, one in Green Bay, and now the NFC North, I guess NFC North trend continues, beating the Lions. So yeah, it was just a fun weekend overall, being able to experience a Michigan Wolverines game. That was pretty cool, just seeing that stadium. And then the next day, fans were overly, very welcoming. There wasn't like, mean fans of any of that nature. Some fans in our section were kind of hassling my friend Jay with his shirt. He had he had a full shirt with the motorboater on the back. And these guys were just keep on like saying that word over and over again for no reason. They were just kind of bugging us throughout the game. Obviously had a few alcoholic beverages. So other than that, I mean, it was a great time. People around us were really nice. We had Bucks fans behind us, so that was really cool. But yeah, from the game, it's when you look at the numbers, obviously analytics show that Bucks probably lose this game 9 out of 10 times. But um, it's that one time where they found ways to make the big plays, and key moments in the game, they kept coming up with these plays that they made, whether it's, getting those fourth down stops, getting the turnovers early in the game. Um, and then obviously the 2 touchdowns that the Buccaneers did score, just great executed play calls. The one to Godwin was perfect. Call it up, diagnose the coverage, you get the right coverage against that call, and you hit it for, a 41-yard touchdown. And then the QB draw was perfect. I mean, you get right into the red zone there with the big third down run by Baker. And most of the time when you're in the red zone, you don't really expect, 11-yard QB draw called up. But that's what they went to. It was, again, another play that matched what the defense was giving you, and you take advantage. So I think this game just shows, like, J-Lo said, with all the people that were down and out of this game, it really comes back to that team chemistry and camaraderie, that comes through, and just how close this team is. Um, and I think this team has great leaders on both sides of the ball. I think Jordan Whitehead continues to be that huge piece, bringing him back. Can't state it enough, like how important he is. And now you have young guys like Savasi Dennis, um, who else? Christian Izzy and then Zion McCollum all playing very good football. It's really cool to see. And now you have a young, promising pass rusher in Yaya Diaby that is coming alive. Like, I know the sacks aren't there, but this guy is in top of the league in pressures, and he's just getting better and better. And now, if you can get Kalijah Cansey to come back in a few weeks, that's going to make your defense that much better. So, really excited to see what's going to happen from here. But big win can't be stated enough. And I think that's a game where you look back later in the season, you look at that game, it's going to be a huge dividend to pull out a game that you probably shouldn't have won, but you did. And I think that's a huge advantage for the Buccaneers.
This is why you bring on Michael Plus, everyone. Really great analysis from you there. The two main plays that I really want to piggyback on you with was that touchdown to Godwin. Cohen was on with Casey Phillips on one of the Bucs censored YouTube like short clips there. It was like a 20-minute like interview where they're talking about the game, and that was one of those plays that he said that him and Baker really collaborated on. It was something that was in the game plan, and they knew the moment that they got to the 50, they were basically going to set that up, and obviously it was executed to perfection. Chris Godwin, 11 catches, over 100 yards in the first half. Didn't really see anything in the second half, but he really set the tone there to really get the offensive game plan sparked and going and give us that momentum because, like you said, the defense was holding the Lions to 3 points, which, again, if you score 7s instead of 3s, that's going to be the difference in the game. And then that QB draw was, a crazy play call because, you get 40 seconds between plays. And from there, we know how quickly those plays can get called, and specifically with that play, what Luke Kuechly, who was on I forgot her name, the girl who was on Good Morning Football, she's branched out now. I forgot Kay Adams. He was on with Kay Adams and was talking about how hard that is for a defense because. After the Bucs do that QB sneak, again, that clock's ticking. And for a play caller to understand that, to spread everyone out and then do that QB draw, every defender, like defensive line, was just rushing the passer, then having to run after Baker. Linebacker dropping into coverage, then have to run to Baker. DBs on their man, on their assignments, guarding Mike, Chris, one-on-one. And then having to realize that Baker's running and then run to Baker. And then you get to the line of scrimmage and you really just come in with that QB draw. Everyone on that defense is tired. And Luke Kuechly goes, that's one of the worst things that you can have, as a defensive player is when you're tired. And then that one thing you don't expect happen, which Baker QB sneak, which I originally tweeted when it happened, week 2 QB draw with Baker was not on my bingo card, nor was that what I wanted.
Right.
Because, Baker could hypothetically have taken a shot there and, our season could be over. But like I said, Luke Kuechly pointed out that defense is so tired that you can get away with it. And then Plus was talking about the camaraderie and everything that's really going on with this team and this organization. I think 45 being out of the defense has really sparked a lot of players to be able to play to their potential. And then these depth pieces to really come in. Savasi Dennis, with limited snaps with 10 tackles. Jordan Whitehead absolutely loving this defense again, coming back, playing out of his mind. And then those interceptions. Zion McCollum barely practices all week, barely plays in the first game. And then the second was due from a pressure from Mike Green, who was a practice squad elevation after Vita Vea goes down.
Yeah.
So again, so many contributions across the Bucs on Sunday, but really what was really so encouraging is these are the types of games as Bucs fans, we know it's a Bucs life, right? So we know, hey, 3, 4, 5 years ago, pre-Brady, we're losing them. And then that's why, the national media says after Brady leaves, oh, the Bucs are going back to the dumpster again, right? Obviously, I think, the remember the Titans quote, attitude reflects leadership, right? we've seen this team is rallying around Todd Bowles. This team is rallying around Baker Mayfield. And addition by subtraction, I know I've thrown out Devin White, but how about Dave Canales? I mean, Liam Cohen is the real deal. Yeah, the running game isn't perfect.
Mm.
But you know what? What do we say on this podcast? You pass to, set up the run, right? Well, you got Chris Godwin already at 200 yards through 2 games. Mike Evans has still only scratched the surface, but we know what kind of threat he is. 2 touchdowns in the first game.
Right.
Trey Palmer's making an impact, a 40-yard pass interference call, on the first drive. Jalen McMillan already with the touchdown. I mean, everything's being spread out. Everyone except maybe the tight ends has really done really well. But Kate Otten did a lot of chipping against Aiden Hutchinson. So J-Lo, I kind of wanted to get your thoughts here. Just as a fan and, football analysis, person that you are, what were your thoughts when you saw Aiden Hutchinson with 3 sacks in the first quarter?
Actually, I think it was 4 sets in the first quarter, if I'm not mistaken. To be honest,
I stand corrected.
There's your answer right there. Yeah, that was pretty bad. I mean, Justin Skoll did the best he could, I guess, against Aiden Hutchinson. But shout out to Liam Cohen, like you said. I mean, he came up with the game plan, adjusted, on how to, defend him and protect Baker, because we've been seeing a lot of injuries happen this year with a lot of players.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Tua, God rest his soul, with that concussion again. But anyway, but shout out to Cohen, readjusting that. Aiden Hudson, he's a beast. We kind of saw this coming. I was hoping it didn't come that soon in the first quarter. And then I think he got one more, which was 5, which was a record, whatever. F it, you can have that record. At the end of the day, we won the football game. You know what I mean? It's all about winning the football game, regardless of stats or how ugly it looks. And that's where, Baker put carried the team on his back, because he knew that, okay, I'm not going to have all day to throw the ball. I'm going to have to, get creative. And sure enough, he he pretty much broke somebody's ankle almost, with this little shake and bake. That's why I call it shake and bake. But hopefully, we'll get Gadecki back. I think once he's back, whether this week or next week, I think that will make a huge difference on protection as that much goes. I know Cody Mott's been kind of struggling on the run blocking a little bit, but, I'm not going to freak out about it. I mean, there's ways to get better each game, That's just how I feel about that as far as that goes. But shout out to, the offensive line doing the best what they could. I mean, Graham Barton, that guy's a stud. The guy just goes to the second level on blocking, taking on linebackers. That's the kind of lineman I like to see, to create holes. And I think this week we'll see a bigger difference in the run game, because the Broncos' run defense is not very good. They've been struggling really bad as far as that goes. So I expect to see a lot more run play for sure. And plus, to protect Baker, I don't want him running all the time, risk getting injured, because injuries happen.
And with that, plus, I really wanted to, get your thoughts on first Aiden Hutchinson, 6 pressures for the game, 5 sacks.
Right.
Want to get into that with you, but then as J-Lo was kind of getting into the overall offensive line play, I want to get your thoughts first on Aiden Hutchinson, and then your overall thoughts on the offensive line's performance on Sunday.
Yeah, it's tough because, Hutchinson obviously is taking that leap in as he continues to grow as a player, added much to his arsenal in the offseason and now has a spin move. So it just makes him a very tough matchup. And it sucks that you didn't have Luke Gedeke out there, because obviously last year he did a very good job against Aiden Hutchinson. But I think Liam Cohen talked about it, with the video that they posted with the interview with Casey. It was like every time they didn't help or chip, he got a sack. So it's like it was just a very tough situation that they were put in. I think some of the details were missing as far as the offense goes, especially in their we didn't really talk about this, but their route concepts and spacing with the receivers. There were some times where Baker, maybe could have got rid of the ball, but really there was nowhere to go on some of those sacks that were made by Hutchinson. Sometimes he was just back there so quickly that he can't really do anything. So yeah, Aiden is definitely a guy that is taken a step forward and is probably going to become one of those premier pass rushers in the league. So it's tough when you don't have your top, tackles out there. And obviously that limits you as an offense where you have to chip or help because you can only get so many guys out in the pass option. When you have to max protect like that, you can only get, maybe 3 receivers out. And that's very tough going up against a very good defense in Detroit, who were, for the most part playing some zone coverage. And then they went strictly to man coverage and did a lot of good things against our receivers. So that made it difficult to move the football consistently, especially when you get into those 3rd and long situations. And you talk about the run game, that's another thing that was affected by the crowd noise. And it was very loud there. I can admit, probably the loudest stadium I've been in so far as a fan. And haven't been to New Orleans yet. I heard that's pretty loud, but Detroit was right up there. And it felt like a playoff game. It was a playoff atmosphere for sure. And I think with the crowd noise, that affects some of your communication with the run game. You have to get certain calls across and not everybody hears it. So you get certain blocks that were supposed to go another way and it doesn't. And that creates, obviously misses, and it creates, confusion among your run game. So, and then there were some times where the running backs just have to do a better job of hitting that hole, get up and get north and south. Whether that be Rashad. I know Rashad has struggled with that in the past. That is something that he's got to get better at. Bucky, I thought, for the most part, did a pretty good job of navigating and getting at least manageable yards. So that's something where, the run game, I think, will come together. We'll see more of that, this week. But offensive line as a whole, I thought they're progressing. There's a lot of good things that are coming forward. You want to see Cody Mock be a little bit more consistent in pass protection. I think Ben Bredesen has been a very good surprise. I think he's played very well, just steady. And I think that's what you need at the left guard position, especially with what he was brought in to do. Tristan, I think, continues to get better week in and week out. And you saw some misses from him, just communications on the stunts and understanding who to pick up. That's going to get better with time. Same thing with Graham Barton. Like, he continues to learn and improve. So I think they're heading in the right direction. I'm not too worried right now. And I think they'll have a pretty solid game this week against a front that, they're going to have the advantage against for sure.
Absolutely. And we'll get into the Broncos. To really, Jonas, our running backs need to chip correctly. I don't think that's necessarily the case here. Again, from a chipping perspective, speaking just from an offensive lineman's perspective, I'm going to first touch on kind of what like the Bucs, kind of did, and then what a team like, for instance, like the Saints are doing right now that's really helping them be super successful. A lot of times on chips, it can really throw off your rhythm as an offensive lineman. Not that I think Justin Schooley, is a premier, pass blocker and was going to stop Aiden Hutchinson. But when you get that chip from a running back or a tight end, a lot of times they can push them into your inside to really allow that defensive lineman to get a pressure. Or again, as an offensive lineman, what we like to pride ourselves on, especially in pass pro, is to have really strong hands, right? We want to get into the defender's chest plate and not let that puppy go, And from that perspective, when you have 5 yards of space after a chip, it makes that, process really hard. And then Aiden Hutchinson's first sack was actually on a looper. So think about that from that perspective. Let's say the guard, you chip that end, he can kind of run over that guard and kind of even, perform a Texas stunt there. Versus, let's say, what the Saints are doing right now. I really thought the Saints were not necessarily going to, get blown out by Dallas by any means. But I thought, Micah Parsons was really going to make a huge impact against 2 young tackles, one of which is really struggling. And what they decided to do was chip with the tight end and then bring the running back over for a cut block. And what that really did was keep Micah Parsons at bay, unable to really move. Now, I'm not saying that's going to necessarily work every game versus every opponent. But I think what Liam Cohen is really trying to articulate and really tell fans to, plus mentioning that interview he did with Casey Phillips, is really getting to the bottom of when we have that weakness, which right now is just in school with Luka Decki's injury. What can we do to at least slow someone down? And there's so many strategies to do that. At the end of the day, though, if Aiden Hutchinson only has 6 pressures, I consider that a win. What we talk about sacks all the time, it's like blocks in the NBA. They're a sexy stat, but we want to see what allows an offense to be successful, which if I forgot who posted on Twitter, but it was getting passed around and retweeted by everyone in our group chat and a lot of people that I respect just broadly outside of the Bucs community, was how much, zero pressure or how Baker's doing when he doesn't have pressure in his face. And he is one of, if not a statistical leader in that category right now. Right. And that's a credit to what Plus is saying about the offensive line. Ben Bredesen was supposed to be the backup swing guard this year, has really came in and held his own there. Cody Mock, I would say struggling might be a little bit too harsh. I do agree, though, there is, still a mountain for him to climb to reach his potential. But I think first 2 games, he's taken a large step from what he did his first 2 games last year. But what I really think is really exciting about this O-line is I'm not sure how many years Ben Bredesen's been in the league. I'm sure probably around as many as Tristan Wirfs has at this point. Yeah. But this is a really young offensive line. 3 of those guys are on their rookie contracts. Technically, Tristan's still on his rookie contract. We see it across the league. The Lions, they got Penei Sewell, but 4 really esteemed veterans that surround a Penei Sewell. So this is, I hate to use the word like youngery, because especially with Raheem being back in the South, and we're going to get to both the Saints and the Falcons game. I think it's really important to really understand, where the Bucs are compared to the other 2 main teams in the division. And then we're also going to talk about Bryce Young a little bit here as well in the Panthers. But from that perspective, before we hop off the Lions game here, J-Lo, just really want to start with you here. What really stood out to you and what gives you encouragement, for when the Bucs, in a couple weeks are going to hit a pretty tough stretch? Yes, we do have the Broncos here coming up this upcoming week. But then after that, Eagles at home, Falcons short week on the road, Saints on the road, Ravens at home, Falcons, and then from there, the Chiefs and the 49ers before a bye. So I know a lot of Bucs fans are riding high, J-Lo. Do you think the success that we're seeing can be sustained? Or do you think this Lions game was, the Lions might win 7, 8, 9 of those matchups, especially given those injuries, from being able to, allow us to, hey, is this team for real? Or is there, a little bit more wait and see that needs to occur?
I'm thinking we're looking more for real. I'm thinking, even though we are down on injuries, but I'm kind of glad that it's happened now and not later in the year. Kalijah Kancey, unfortunately, with the calf injury he's nursing. Obviously, we're not going to see him this Sunday, I don't think, which is fine. He could take a week off. But I think as we get healthier, when we get Vita, Kalijah back, I'm hoping around maybe the Philly or not Atlanta game at best. I think this team can definitely pull a big, more wins and loss ratios. Because just the way they came together against a team like Detroit, who's supposed to be this powerhouse team in the NFC, probably to me, I pretty much predict they were the second best NFC team in the conference. I think this team could definitely surprise a lot of people when it comes to a team like the Eagles, because obviously the Eagles are very beatable. You saw how Atlanta took care of them on that final drive on defense, so obviously they got some issues going on. Atlanta, there's still a big question mark. To me, I still feel they're overrated. I'm not too worried about them as much. I think we'll split the season with them. That's just my prediction. I predicted on Buccaneers. The Saints are always going to be the Saints, man. No matter what their record is, they've always been a thorn in us, no matter what the record is. So it's going to be a tough stretch. But if we can get to the bye week over 500 or at 500, I'm so okay with that. Because at the end of the day, that back end of the schedule looks very winnable. Like we could go on another big, run like we did last year. So, but I'm feeling pretty confident on the Bucs definitely making a strong run. And Baker, he's playing at a high level right now. To me, he's playing MVP type level the first 2 games. If you want to be honest with you on that, so I like where we're going. I like that we're getting the Broncos to kind of let some of our top players rest. Hopefully, Bulls will get them ready to play like he did last week. You can't take any team lightly, no matter what their record is. And plus we got Sean Payne coming here, and he's been a thorn in our butts for a long time. So it'll be an interesting game. I wouldn't sleep on it. I think we're going to get an entertaining game, if you ask me.
Plus, same to you. Are the Bucs? I know Gene would typically call this a contender or pretender segment. Are we justified in your eyes to be in, top 3 team in Mike Florio's eyes, top 5 team in Pete Prisco's eyes? I think right now the Bucs are at least generally considered in these power rankings a top 10 team. Is that justified in your eyes, Plus?
Yeah, I don't really dive into too much of that. I would just say this Buccaneers team is a good football team, and I think they have a very good chance of continuing on this trajectory of moving forward and continuing to get better. I think that's what we're looking for as Bucs fans. Obviously you don't want to peak too early. I think the biggest thing is for this team just to continue to make minor improvements, obviously get healthy, get your key guys back. And I expect a lot of those guys to be back by the division games where, you have them, to lean on and obviously help this team. The biggest thing or the biggest takeaway I see so far for this season is just the improvement in the coaching staff. I think Todd Bowles has made huge strides as far as being not only a leader of this team, because everybody has bought into his message. And I think that is important, but also just how he's handling the game within the game. There's adjustments being made on both sides of the ball, which you haven't seen in the past where, from Liam Cohen making these adjustments in game mid series or after drives or here and there, just making the small adjustments to put the Buccaneers in a better position to make said plays. Like we talked about it with both touchdowns, seeing those adjustments and making them or having them already ready in your back pocket, I think is huge. And then the understanding of how to beat the Detroit Lions and their offense and like how to shut them down inside the red zone. The addition of Savasier Dennis being that coverage linebacker that can cover so many different things. And then, you add that with Christian Izien and Jordan Whitehead, where you have the versatility that you haven't had before. And now you have a young rookie in Tyke Smith, who probably had the toughest matchup of the day where he's facing Amon St. Brown. Just incredible, like how they're growing. So I see the potential of just continuing to grow. And I think that's huge for this team because you have a lot of young pieces that are gaining valuable experience. That's just going to help this team in the long run. So I'm really, really excited for what I see, and I expect this team to continue to grow and get better. So yeah, I mean, for us to be a top 3 team in the NFC, yeah, sure. I put us up against anybody in the NFC. This team shouldn't fear anybody. I don't think there's a big leap between one team or the other. I think we can compete with the 49ers. I think we can compete with the Lions. All these teams in the NFC you can compete with. Now, when you look at the AFC, again, I think it's not that far off. I know the Chiefs are probably still a neck above just because of what they have, and obviously the quarterback and the coach combination. And then it also helps when you have the refs on your side too. So, when you put that all together, but this team is right there because of those upgrades that they've made on the coaching staff. I think that's the biggest takeaway I see so far, and just how the coaches and the players are on the same page, probably for the first time in a long time, because even last year with the success that the offense had, I still felt there was like some type of disconnect here and there where you just see that certain lull where nothing would happen. We didn't really see that against Detroit. I know there was drives where we didn't get points, but you still saw progress. You saw the right process. You saw certain things that were flowing correctly. So that has me very encouraged for this football team. And I think a lot of Bucs fans should be excited about where this team is heading.
Absolutely. And the NFL season is a marathon, not a sprint. We know this.
Right. It's a
17
week.
weeks,
Yeah.
1
Week to
week
week
off.
league. Yeah.
Week to week, I, as someone who sports bets, I'm not a crazy gambler by any means, but I like to pay attention to the spreads, the money lines, and everything that's kind of going on. And this past weekend, they were upsets really across the board. Week 1, yeah, there was the Bengals, but we saw the 49ers go down. And not only just go down, Deebo Samuel's hurt. We saw the Eagles have a game completely in hand for 58 minutes and then drop one pass and blow the game entirely. Yeah. That was the game I bet on the most. So that one hurt a bit. But really, at the end of the day, though, what we're seeing is the NFL is truly a week-to-week league. And what really differentiates this team, and even some from even the Tom Brady teams, is they're not shooting themselves in the foot, especially early in the game. You don't need to necessarily score a touchdown on your first possession. But what we're seeing is the Bucs are putting on points on the board, being opportunistic on defense, bending but not breaking. Those types of signs are just really encouraging, especially as Plus was alluding to. That's a hostile environment in Detroit. Yeah. They have been waiting 50 years for a team to be this good and to be this talented and to really be the talk of the town in all of these, loud talk shows that exist in today's, social media world, where that's how we consume this. And I'm going to finish up my little rant here real quick. But first, I wanted to say, as MK said, hit that like button, subscribe. This is Gene's channel right here. But make sure you guys are subscribing to the Bucketeers podcast on YouTube, to Real Bucs Talk on YouTube. I know Michael Pless didn't have his typical, Monday, morning quarterback victory Monday podcast, but he's been doing the rounds here, joining everyone's podcast. This is a real community here of really good individuals that have really good content out there, especially for you Bucs fans. So to put the bow on top of the Detroit Lions game, I think this team being able to show that they didn't make mistakes, even the Baker interception, he just plainly didn't see Brian Branch, who himself had a hell of a game. Yeah, and even the linebacker, who I forgot his name, Barnes, who picked Baker off in the playoff game last year to seal the game, that 3rd and short, that play action pop pass, if he doesn't block that, that's a walking first down for Evans. Detroit is a good team. They're going to make plays. Yes, Detroit played a good ball game, but what they didn't do is they didn't do the small details. I can tell you from experience that, before a half, when that clock is winding down, your special teams, all of them are on the sidelines. They're waiting for the call. What that tells me is the special teams coordinator made that call to have everyone on the field. I disagree with the call because I didn't think there was enough time for that. However, there was clear miscommunication there. And that's something that, again, the Bucs did not do. That's the Bucs team of old. And I think Todd Bowles shouldered a lot of, blame for a lot of those types of mistakes. And what, to Pless's point, and I think J-Lo mentioned about this, the coaching staff as well, is we're seeing a really cohesive coaching staff as well as players who are on the same page. Levante David has the green dot. I think that has a big key into why the defense is playing as well as they are. And we've even heard for the past 3 years from Todd Bowles, for really 5 years from Todd Bowles, that communication would be the issue in certain games. I haven't heard him say it once. No. Granted, we're 2 weeks in. There's a lot of season left. But to have that little communication errors with as young of a team this is, and not even just a young team with just, hey, you have a young 53. No, like you have 7 or 8 players combined on both sides of the ball playing significant snaps that are in their first or second year. And
Yeah.
I think that's just going to pose a lot of great things for the Bucs long term. Plus,
No, I was just gonna add to that real quick. Yeah, we haven't seen one blown coverage yet, which is awesome to see. And then just to your point of the little details, like it was super loud in there, and to only have one pre-snap penalty is quite the feat, on especially on offense. You only had one false start. And other than that, you didn't really have any other penalties. You had a couple on defense for sure, but no holdings, no just nothing, no legal formations, none of that. And that's a credit to the coaching staff. And I think that's huge for just the overall team. And it just shows you how locked in guys are. And I think that's a really big thing to see going forward.
absolutely. And speaking of coaches, I want to just hit up the other 3 teams in the NFC South here. So, J-Lo, I'm going to start with you. With the transition from Dave Canales to Liam Cohen, obviously left a lot of fans, sad, and media members saying, oh, Baker is super reliant on Dave Canales for his success. So I want to know your thoughts, J-Lo, on Dave Canales going to Carolina. We don't have to spend too much time on that one, but how do you feel about Bryce Young and his performance? And do you think that his benching was justified?
Dave Canales, he's still learning in the game, unfortunately. He had some good success here. And of course, you can't pass up on a coaching job because they come once in a lifetime.
His
Even
only
if
interview, by the way, everyone. He had one interview and was with his buddy, and he got the job. That's very rare in the NFL. Please continue, J-Lo.
no, it's very rare. I felt Dave might jump too quickly, but I get it. He took it. He tried to take advantage, thinking he could run a football team. But as you see, if I notice, he's looking more over his head. I feel like in some of his interviews, you can tell that the owner's pressing him really hard, telling him, "Hey, you need to get this going, get it fixed. We're 0-2. We can't even get, we're at what, like 10, 13 points a game or something. That's not going to cut it in the
Mostly
NFL."
garbage time, too. Not even like they scored 13 in the first half.
Oh, I mean, no, it's bad. I mean, it's
Yeah.
terrible. So I'm thinking Dave had to make a move quickly. He's like, okay, you know what? Let's bench Bryce Young. Maybe we might have played him too soon. He didn't get much playing time in the preseason either. If you watch the preseason, I think the first 2 games he didn't play.
Yeah.
So that's mistake number 1 by Dave Canales. Like, the guy needs to improve, and you need to put him out there. I don't understand what that was about. I feel like the owner has a lot of control in this. I feel like he really pushed a lot of buttons with other coaches he's had in the past. And unfortunately, Dave, I don't see him making it to year 2. I'm thinking that the ownership's definitely going to get fed up and cut him loose too, and end up paying him as well. But I wish him the best. I do. Even though he's on a division rival team, I feel like he's got some playing and learning to do from this experience he's experiencing. But to me, Bryce Young just wasn't the guy. Thank God they didn't get C.J. Stroud, or else that would have been a nightmare. God forbid.
Well, would have been? Would CJ have been
We don't
6?
know.
And that'll be a question for you, plus. J-Lo,
Yeah.
quick reaction here. Do you think, A, Dave Canales will be able to make it till next year? And if not, do you think he'd get fired before the end of the year or on Black Monday?
It's a really tough question. It's really hard to tell because this owner,
Yeah. Quick
I
trigger.
feel like he may not make it to Black Monday. I'm thinking before the season ends. I feel like the owner's going to end up getting more fed up because they're not winning football games, not producing, and the fans are letting them have it. The fans are going off on the owner, and that's another thing. He just can't accept criticism that he's just not a good owner. So that's why I feel he will fire him before season's end, and then Carolina's going to be starting over yet again. Until that owner is gone, Carolina's in for a world of crap until he is gone. That's just my opinion on that one.
Thank you for that,
Yeah.
J-Lo. And from that perspective, I obviously live in Carolina. I'm surrounded by Panthers Nation. I can say that type of, disdain for David Tepper is very shared amongst the whole community here in Carolina. I think it's very obvious the way that he is and how it's communicated. We've seen Dave in, interviews. He's been on Pewter Report. He's been on, all the interviews that he's done, like one-on-one with Casey Phillips or anything Bucs media related, Rick Stroud. Like, he's made the media rounds. We know he's a very charismatic guy. He looks like he's wearing a 500-pound weight vest, and it's David Tepper just standing on his shoulders, while he's at this press conference. So plus, I think we all can probably agree that this is probably Bryce Young's, last snaps bearing an injury with the Carolina Panthers, or out of desperation at the end of the year, just to see what else, he may have learned after sitting. But do you think that this team has enough talent and good coaching to win games with Andy Dalton under center?
It's going to be tough sledding. I mean, even with Andy Dalton, it's obviously I think he'll provide a spark. He'll probably move the offense a little bit better, just because he is a veteran, knows what to look for, knows how to, diagnose a defense a little bit quicker. But yeah, it's still going to be tough sledding. Their defense is already hurting with no Derek Brown in there, and I mean, they're still going to give up points. I don't think it's going to change the outcomes too much. I mean, Andy Dalton probably win him a game or two, but after that, it's not going to make a difference. And it's tough for Bryce Young because he was such in a tough spot to begin with. Very tough situation, like we've already talked about with David Tepper, and just it goes to show you how important ownership and management from the top down is so pivotal, because you look at the Buccaneers and what they have in place with Jason Light and ownership. And I know ownership got a lot of flack during those down years. But they do care and they do like winning, and they've done a good job of moving the football operations to Jason Light and giving him that trust. And I think that is something where Tepper's obviously missing the ball there, where he's not giving these guys control like they need to. Let the football guys handle the football side of things, and obviously that's not happening. And I do like Dave Canales. I like him as a coach. I think he could be a very good head coach one day. He's just not there yet. There's going to take some time for him to grow and continue to develop. And it just sucks for Bryce, because I think he had tools to be a good quarterback. Now, the thing with him is he was more based on accuracy. That was his calling card in college. He was a very accurate quarterback, being able to hit the outside routes and do a lot of things outside the numbers. But when you don't have the physical tools, you lack the size, you lack the height, you lack the, power arm, because, you can compare him to, you look at Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's maybe just barely over 6 feet tall, right? But he's got a great arm. He's got very, good mobility, ability to move around, and very accurate on certain throws, and can really deliver when he has a pocket to step into, and knows how to read a defense, and very smart individual. So that's where, Bryce Young is probably going to become that kind of gear teams to shy away from that quarterback that is not overly physical attributes wise. You're going to see teams kind of go away from that, because it's unfortunate. And Bryce has just lost confidence. Like, he was really bad these first 2 weeks. And I think that's why, the change was necessary for sure.
Absolutely. And for me, I think Andy Dalton might be able to sneak a win or two here, but I think what they're going to be able to see is a better, well-run offense. But my only problem with what the Carolina Panthers have is what we know as Bucs fans. It's the staff that surrounds Dave Canales. We know that they will square peg into a round hole their running game. We know that there's only going to be so much creativity that goes on with Dave Canales calling plays. We know that, their best player on defense is unavailable. So they still have so many factors and different, uphill battles that they're going to have to face just to be competitive, even with the quarterback probably slight upgrade, because Andy Dalton is known as being the guy who's nothing special, right? And T. Smitty, this was a hilarious comment. I had to throw it up here because, hey, if David Tepper wants to drive media and, hype, Shador might be a potential target, whether the Panthers are picking 1 or in the top 5. I think we can all agree they're probably going to be in the top 5, and they're probably going to be the only team that, at least the Bucs, I think we can count on sweeping, bearing injuries here.
Right.
But what's concerning about Dave Canales to me is he doesn't have the supporting cast around him. And I think he has a good bubbly personality, really has good values at Berkeley in high school. Coach Sayo really taught us a motto that we really live by, which is coaches that care about coaches, coaches that care about players, and players that care about players. I think Dave does a good job in instilling that. But we know the NFL is not high school football. You need the front office. You need the training staff. You need the strength staff. And it seems like they cannot just get in sync. And they might pull the whole, after a coach gets fired or a quarterback gets benched, play one really good game. But I don't see the sustained success from them. And from that perspective, or from that, again, they have one of the easiest schedules in the NFL, which is what the NFC South has. But they overinvested resources in places that they shouldn't. They had a GM who's rookie and in my opinion, is not a good person that I would want running my organization. And we saw that by hiring a guy who only got one interview, and it was the guy you shared an office with, 15 years ago. So again, we'll wrap it up on the Panthers here. First, Plus, I want you to talk about that Falcons game real quick. We saw Kirk Cousins put a drive together at the end of the game. Do you think that is a sign of the Falcons finally piecing everything together? Or was that a sign of prevent defense by the Eagles? And that's why Kirk Cousins looked good at the end of the game when he really hadn't looked good for 7 7/8 of quarters.
Yeah, I think for the Falcons, I mean, the only thing that I think is coming together for their team is maybe the rushing offense. I think that's their strength. And obviously when they run the football, they have pretty good success. So that's going to be their calling card. I think with Kirk Cousins, I'm not really seeing anything that is an eye opener or they're putting everything together. I think their weapons overall are okay. But I think you have an injured quarterback out there that's not healthy. And I don't think he's got the arm strength or the zip behind his football right now. And that's going to hurt you. And I think it shows, I think it's a very telling sign where teams get blitzes or pressure him. He struggles. There's no way to move outside of the pocket. There's no confidence there when he's outside of the pocket as far as making throws. And I think the Falcons are probably destined to continue to struggle here, I think, as we move forward. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see Michael Penix in the game, sooner rather than later, for sure.
And with that, J-Lo, with the Falcons obviously pulling off that victory and quite frankly, the Saints playing out of their ever-loving minds, we know that, again, even if they, are able to pull off some wins here, I think they have the Eagles at home this week. So Eagles might be on a revenge game or the Eagles season might be over soon. So who do you think is the real threat to the Bucs? And do you think the Bucs should be the favorite in the NFC South?
To me, the real threat is probably the Saints after watching what they did to Dallas in their own home, which kind of blew my mind. like I knew the first game was Carolina. We know what a dumpster fire they are right now. But the Cowboys are supposed to be this contending team, hard to beat at home. I think they had like a 12 season home win streak that got broken. So, I think Clint Kubiak is doing a lot of good things over in New Orleans. I think he's definitely getting the offense going. I say they will probably be our biggest threat for the NFC South. For the most part, Atlanta to me, I agree with Pless. I just feel that Kirk Cousins is not 100%. I just don't think I just don't see him leading this team this year. I think next year will be Atlanta's window. You get 1 year, depending how Kirk Cousins, if he can stay healthy or not, because you never
Yeah.
know. But going back to Philadelphia, their defense laid down. They laid down, didn't know what to do. They didn't get no pressure on Kirk Cousins on that last drive. And that's the only way you're going to stop Kirk Cousins. You got to get pressure on him. You got to pressure him into scrambling or attempt to scramble, but he can't run very fast because he's recovering.
Just send blitzes.
I'm just saying, but it'll be really.
Todd Bowles has no problem sending blitzes, so at least we don't have to worry about that.
Oh no, he's going to send the house against the Broncos. But back to Philadelphia and New Orleans, it'll be interesting to see. I feel Philadelphia's going to come in pissed off because, they had a game, they had them beaten at home, and they end up blowing it. But then again, you got the Saints on fire, playing with their heads on fire. It's going to be a fun game to tune into. I feel like whoever wins that game, the Saints pull out the win, then I say, you got to take this team seriously because they just beat two top teams in the NFC. But Philadelphia wins, then it shows that, okay, maybe the Saints are beatable, and maybe there are some holes, that they need to work on. But it'll be interesting. I feel the Saints will be our biggest challenge, and they always are. Even by their record, I mean, they came down here last year and beat the crap out of us when we're supposed to, finish them off and win the division. So that's always been my thing. Saints will always be the biggest thorn between the three teams in the NFC South.
Absolutely. And before I get to you, Plus, one thing that JLo pointed out there is, the Saints are always in it. Even this year, when a lot of people predicted the Saints to win 5 or less games, I was like, hey, the Saints have some veteran leadership. Dennis Allen might not win you a playoff game, but he's shown he's going to win at least 7 games. And we've seen everyone, is now getting picked up by the national media. Yeah, the Bucs have won the division the past 3 years. That is absolutely true. But do you know who's been in second place every single one of those years? It's been the Saints, except for the 1 year where there was a 3-way tie and tiebreakers. But other than that, the Saints record-wise are tied for are second every single year consistently. So I agree with you, JLo. They're definitely the threat, and the Eagles are coming in there probably without A.J. Brown again. So from that regards, hey, if the Saints start off the season 3-0, 2 probably quality wins that are also on the Bucs schedule. So if the Bucs, let's say, were to drop the games to the Cowboys and the Eagles, that can really help the Saints from a tiebreaker perspective as well. So that's something for us to monitor, especially as the Bucs season progresses. So plus, round us out on the division here. How do you see before the bye where the Bucs are going to stand within the NFC South?
Yeah, I think the Bucs will be right there. I mean, obviously, as it stands now, you're looking at, the Saints. I think the Saints are kind of catching the league by storm. They're kind of catching lightning in a bottle right now because of the new offense that they brought in. You went away from that Pete Carmichael / Sean Payton offense that's been around forever with them, and now you bring in a new offense led by Clint Kubiak, who basically running the Kyle Shanahan offense. And I think that kind of fits what they have personnel wise. And you're seeing a resurgence from Alvin Kamara, and they have a really good offensive line that can run block very effectively. And they'll probably have success against Philadelphia, who's one of the worst rushing defenses right now in the league, which is kind of surprising. But I mean, the Saints are doing just a good job of running the ball, and then they're using play action to help Derek Carr. And, Derek Carr is going to have those games where he looks good, but we're all waiting for that game where he throws 4 interceptions. And it's like, where did this come from? I think
not only that, but I'm waiting to see when Derek Carr starts throwing 4-yard passes on 3rd and 13.
Yeah.
The Derek Carr that, what happens when a team stops Rashid Shaheed?
Mhm.
I mean, Chris Olave still hasn't done much
Right.
in the Derek Carr era in New Orleans. And I think we all can agree Rashid Shaheed's an amazing story, but we
Mhm.
know the talent that Chris Olave is. And he's, in my opinion, the biggest threat outside of Alvin Kamara on the
Right.
New Orleans Saints.
Yep.
So again, where is this Carr? It's like Baker last year. Is
Mhm.
this the Baker that we see, that was going to continue that momentum into this year? Thankfully, so far, it's yes. Is
Mhm.
this the Derek Carr that's going to sustain for 17 weeks and maybe be a thorn in our side for future years? That's what I think is going to be, the thing to really, monitor as Bucs fans to be able to see, hey,
Right.
we know what Carolina's QB situation is. To Gene's point here and to Pless's point, we might see Michael Penix at some point if this
Mhm.
offense continues to struggle. So we know what those two QB situations are. The Saints, if Dennis Allen got fired, Derek Carr was going to go. Like, hey, is Derek Carr going to be like, the Baker Mayfield resurgence story next year if he has a good year this year? That would be really sucky as a Bucs fan. But let's see which Carr it is first before we
Mhm.
jump out the window and play tiebreaker games for the division and who's going to be in and who's going to be a wild card. I think it's really interesting to see what the Saints have done, and I think you really have to tip your caps to them.
Yeah.
Clint Kubiak obviously is getting a lot of roses right now, but to T. Smitty's point about Jalen Hurts, the NFL catches up to you. We'll
Mhm.
see if Clint Kubiak can sustain this. Let's see if Liam Cohen can sustain this while we're at it.
Mhm.
I think that's going to be really fun for this division that everyone thought was going to be absolute dog shit. Carolina has proved to be that. Well, the Falcons, let's see if they can ride that momentum. They got the Chiefs
Mhm.
coming into the dome there. The Saints have the Eagles, and then and this was my transition over to the Broncos game because guys, we're at the nearly at the 1 hour mark. We're going to go about 10 more minutes here, so bear with us. We're going to go a little bit over. But Pless, I want you to start us off here on the Broncos.
Mhm.
Are they a trap game? Are they a team that the Bucs should have wrapped up, signed, sealed, and delivered by halftime? Or do you see the Broncos making this a competitive game?
I think it's a game where the Buccaneers are going to be focused. I think they'll be prepared to play. I don't see it as a trap game. I think the Buccaneers have advantages on both sides of the ball. When you look at the Broncos offense, obviously Bo Nix, a rookie quarterback, they have an offensive line that is banged up and also not very good. So I think you're going to see a lot of pressure packages. You're going to see probably a couple of sacks here and there, and you'll probably see a few interceptions to go along with that. And then offensively, I think this is a game where the Buccaneers will be able to run the football. I think you'll get that back on track. And they're going to play smart as far as how they attack the Broncos secondary, which is probably the strongest point of their team. And it's a defense that has played well. They only given up so many points, but
Two
they've also,
safeties in one game.
yeah. So it's a strong defense. And obviously we have to watch out for Zach Allen. That's one where, you have to be mindful of, especially probably going up against Justin School again if Luke Gedeke can't play. But I would expect us to run the football well, and I would expect Baker to play, a consistent game where we can get some touchdowns. And I think this is a game where you win, probably 24-10, 28-10, somewhere in that range where defense locks it down, Bucs offense control the football, and we find a way to get to 3-0.
J-Lo, to you. Sean Payton, you're my guy tonight talking about the Saints being thorns in our side. Sean Payton was the source of said thorn. He's the one who, even when he left and Dennis Allen's the one who took over, he's a Sean Payton guy. Sean Payton's in Denver. Russell Wilson didn't work. You get Bo Nix in here. Is Sean Payton, to Gene's point, a fraud? and he was mainly like Drew Brees, like, made him? Or again, do you think that the Broncos, because of Sean Payton's knowledge, experience against Todd Bowles, do you see them making this a competitive game? Or do you see this being the pluses point that 28-10?
I think it will be competitive in the first half. I feel Sean Payton still's got somewhat of a knowledge. I do feel he is kind of a fraud. I feel like Drew Brees did kind of make him. After Brees left, he couldn't really get a consistent quarterback, and he only did it, and he only had 1 year without Brees, and you see how long he lasted. He left, so that's my opinion on that. But I think we'll see some competitiveness in the first half, kind of similar to what the Washington game was. I think we'll let Nitz get away with a couple things, but I think we'll get after him, get some sets in there, and plus their right tackle, which I think is their best
Mike
lineman on the
McGlinchey,
line, he's going to be out. So I'm pretty sure we're going to see a lot of pressure out of Yaya, JTS, maybe even Chris Braswell. Get the kid in there and to go in there and get after Nitz.
That's a name Bucs fans haven't heard this regular season yet, so that'd be really exciting to see a little flash there.
And I think Brazo's one of those guys going to be like a Yaya Diaby, just come up, probably take the starting spot. But I ain't going to take that away from GTS. He's been playing some pretty good football the last 2 weeks. So, but you can never have enough pass rushers. You can never not have enough. So I like where it's going. I feel this game will be competitive in the first half, and then right around third quarter is the turning point, and we'll end up benching Bo Nitz because he just can't get it going. And I think he'll throw at least 2 or 3 pits, and Payne will be like, okay, let's get Zach Wilson, whoever in there, and we just go after them too. Just bring the house. So this will be a fun one to watch. I feel like Plus mentioned, I think they'll be prepared to play and not take any team lightly. Mike Evans, I don't expect him to get a lot of yards. I feel like he'll get his touches, but Patrick Surtain, I think, is their best player on defense. So I see more Chris Godwin getting his touches again, of like 100 yards receiving, maybe a couple touchdowns. So bets with prop bets, I would bet on Chris Godwin to be the player of the game, just making his catches like he did in the Detroit game.
Yeah,
absolutely. And for the sorry, Plus go.
No, I was just gonna say real quick, this is a sneaky Cade Otton game here. I think Cade Otton could have a very solid football game where the matchups kind of play to his strengths in this one. But I think the running game is going to kind of lead the way here.
Absolutely. And we're talking about great game scripts here where the Bucs will be in favor to be able to run the ball effectively. And my only I love what you said about Cade Otton Plus. My only caveat there would be if Luke Gadecki plays, because otherwise, Otton may have to chip. But other than that, I love that call. I'm waiting for that before I bet on any props there for Cade Otton. I'm actually going to disagree with you, J-Lo, in terms of Chris Godwin is always and should be, especially in this offense, the straw that stirs the drink. And Pat Surtain is one heck of a corner. Yeah. But we also see year after year, the cornerback position is the most volatile position. And what is Sean Payton going to do? Pat Surtain has not seen Mike Evans, at least to my knowledge, off the top of my head. No, so from that regard, Pat Surtain, he's going to think is going to come in and be Marshawn Lattimore. And we know Marshawn Lattimore has almost a dozen, if not more, games against Mike Evans. So he knows the lay of the land. And it's going to be a lot different of a game. And what I see is, to Pless's point with the run game, I see a play action shot to Evans. That's something we haven't really seen in this offense yet. It's been, especially against the Lions, a bunch of nickel and diming, working your way up the field. The explosive plays were really in that Commanders game, but I really think the Bucs want to control the clock on this one, put a lot of pressure on the rookie Bo Nix. JTS is the only player on the Bucs with sacks right now, fellas. He's got 2.
Yeah,
so I think if there's Savasier's got 1. Okay, at least we got a third one in there. So I got my stats wrong there.
Well, they changed it. They gave 1 to JTS and then 1 to Savasier. So it's only 2.
So it's only 2 total. Okay. So that's where I got that wrong. So with JTS and Savasier, one being an off-ball linebacker who only plays on passing downs. So really, we're talking about our defensive line only having 1 sack. This is the game if you want to reach 50 sacks in a season, this is the game where you get 4, 5, 6. You know what I mean? And that's what I really want to see from this, because I want the game script to be, you're up 10 points, midway through the second quarter. And then you're forcing the Broncos and Peyton to get out of what they want to do, which is control that clock, short passes, get out of their game script to be able to hand off the ball to like the Javonte Williamses of the world to do damage against us. So really for us, as long as we don't turn the ball over, again, I don't think, Baker fumbled the ball, we had 2 fumbles against the Lions, Baker having one of them, at least on one of the sacks. So we haven't lost a fumble yet this year. And we've only thrown that 1 pick, which Baker just didn't see Brian Branch. So we haven't been turning the ball over, and we've been getting some turnovers. Yeah. So if we sustain that, this should be, in my opinion, at least a 2-score win. Mm-hmm. However, if we're going to turn the ball over and you keep Sean Payton around, we know Sean Payton, has some things dialed for Todd Bowles. We know this for a fact. Todd Bowles and the Bucs' success really drove Peyton out of New Orleans. Let's just say it how it is. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, I want the Bucs to come out with this win. However, they have to continue not shooting themselves in the foot. And if that's going to be the Bucs' new identity, that alone is going to, when we play the Eagles, when we play the Ravens, when we play the Chiefs, when we play the 49ers, that's how you beat those teams. You have your explosive plays, you nickel and dime your way up the field, you don't turn the ball over, and you're opportunistic on defense. So if that's going to be the Bucs' identity, they're not only just an NFC contender, they're a championship contender, whether it be for the NFC or the Super Bowl. But again, we're not going to put the cart before the horse on this podcast. But I think as a Bucs fan, it's really exciting to see how the Bucs are having an identity, playing the game with a bunch of heart, and winning a game when you're through perseverance. When you're down your best 3 defensive players, love Levante. I'm just going to exit you out right now because you're a little bit long in the tooth. But Kalijah Cansey, Vita Vea, Antoine Winfield are the spine of this defense. And to win a game like Detroit in those types, and we're learning how valuable Luke Gadecki even is, and tell that to a Bucs fan going into last season, what that feels like, because I'm going to speak for myself. Michael Pless and Josh Capo were the only 2 people I saw anywhere in Bucs community that was high on Luke Gadecki's transition to right tackle. And then when he gave up a couple sacks in a playoff game, identified through film that it wasn't his fault. Yeah. So from, a film perspective, please, everyone, Michael Pless, Real Bucs Talk. They're always putting out high quality content. If you don't have access to the All 22, too freaking bad. They do, and they're going to talk you through what is going on different plays, situations, personnel. Give you reports on Jalen McMillan. If Chris Braswell's playing, give you reports on Chris Braswell. Give you reports on how Baker's doing. Real Bucs Talk is where you're going to find that. And then as we roll out of here, we're going to talk really quickly about the Buccateers here as well. So we're going to go J-Lo, then Plus as we log off here. But J-Lo is part of the Buccateers podcast. I remember when they first invited me on, when they were only a few subscribers and there was only Tones and a couple of his friends. They have grown that to hundreds of subscribers. And every time I'm on there, there's 25, 50, 100 people in that chat. And they have really expanded to bring on some really cool guests, former Bucs players, current Bucs players. They're doing a great job of giving you, the fans, good content to really chew on, as well as good guests to provide you valuable insight. So, J-Lo, I want you to plug really quickly the Buccateers podcast, how they can find you, and anything else that you all have maybe on deck or coming around the corner.
Yeah, thank you, Kimmy. We appreciate it. I joined Buccaneers last year. Tampa Tones, he gave me an opportunity to join a great group of, football lovers, got to meet a lot of other good people, that are very knowledgeable. We got a great group of guys. We love our butts. We usually run between Tuesday and Saturdays. Saturdays are really fun to me because we don't just talk about Buccaneer football. We also talk about college ball, prop bets, and all that fun stuff to kind of help keep all the other college football lovers entertained as well. But yeah, you can follow us on YouTube, Spotify. We're all over the place. We're coming up. Like KB said, we have former Buck players, current Buck players on. CJ Brewer was on with us, who's on the team.
He's the guy who caused the. I think I said the wrong name earlier. CJ Brewer was the one who caused the pressure on the second golf interception.
CJ Brewer and then Tyler Funderburk, who made the roster. He was also on the show. I wasn't on that one, unfortunately, but he was a wonderful guy. I watched over, great guy. Like at the end of the day, we're just another pod, that wants to bring the fans insight, for the most part. So our next show will be on Saturday for another Saturday Showdown, which will be a real treat, and I want to tune in on it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
What time do you guys normally go live on Saturdays?
So usually 10:30, between 10:30, 10:45.
10:30 Eastern, because I know Tones is in that central time. Okay. So 10:30. I'm going to be there. You guys make sure you're in that chat room for the Buccaneers. Thank you again, JLo, for hopping on with us. Plus, if you're watching this show and Gene, me, and you don't know Michael Pless, you must be super new to this channel. Pless, please plug Real Bucs Talk. Give a brief overview of kind of what you guys do, like JLo did for the Buccaneers. Let the fans here know what your podcasts are about, what your YouTube short videos are about, or just videos in general, and how they can find you and support your channel and follow you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate all the kind words. Yeah, I mean, Real Bucs Talk, you can go find it on YouTube. We're on Twitter as well. Catch us on, I think we have Facebook too, but not many people are on Facebook these days. But yeah, catch us on YouTube. We usually do a live stream every Monday. We try to do that after the game, kind of do a live film breakdown. We've been bringing that to the live streams now. So look for that. It's always a fun time just going over the tape, going over, just the whys of this team. I think that's our biggest calling card is we really go into why something is working or why something isn't. So we try to give you that. And we're not, we don't know everything. We just try to show people, what we think of this team and what, could be the certain process or, flow of what they're trying to do schematically. And we just try to break it down very simply and try to educate fans. I think that's our biggest thing is educating the Bucs fan base out there and try to show them something different. So, and it's really cool to experience that with everyone here. And like Ken said, I mean, we have a great Bucs fan base as far as community and just the podcasts that are out there. So it's really cool to have that. And one that support each other. So that's really cool. And I think you were talking about it earlier, Ken, but it's just really nice to know that this football team doesn't have to play the perfect game anymore. I think that is the beauty of what we're seeing from this team. And that's probably just the best summary I can give you guys as far as this last game. Like, usually the Bucs would have had to play a perfect game to win, and they don't have to do that.
Fitzpatrick in the New Orleans Superdome.
Right.
Again, heck, like Tom Brady doesn't have to be here. You don't need to have Rob Gronkowski, Antonio Brown, You don't need necessarily to have that stacked roster that the media would tell you about, the dream team of what Philly had, a decade ago, what everyone thought the Falcons were going to be this year. You don't need that. You need the man, which is Todd Bowles, the other man, which is Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
And what you need is a really good roster that is Jason Light, Mike Greenberg, all of those scouts. He is the first one to say, hey, all of my scouts are the superheroes that just don't have a cape. And we see that paying dividend. There isn't another team that has day 3 picks making rosters, let alone contributing. Undrafted free agents. Christian freaking Izien started off the season last year with those picks against Kirk Cousins and that Minnesota Vikings. He plays corner, never played corner, at least since high school. He certainly has said he didn't play it in college. And he certainly hasn't played in the NFL. Played lockdown man coverage against NFL caliber players and got 2 passes defended week 1. And then plays a near perfect game at free safety, which he's never had to do in the NFL because Antoine didn't miss a game last year.
Yep.
Those are the types of players that Jason Light and his staff are finding that make Todd Bowles' job easier, that make Baker Mayfield's job easier. We may be a little bit weak on the trenches because we're not healthy on the defensive side, but look at what this defensive and offensive lines are now compared to last year. Graham Barton is going to come in, and I threw this out on Twitter. Everyone loves Ryan Jensen. Ryan Jensen was not a perfect center. He was not Jason Kelce. Graham Barton, through 2 games, is already on that trajectory of the Jason Kelce's in the run game. You can watch him on Sunday planting really good defensive tackles, highly regarded, highly paid defensive tackles for a knee-biting head coach. Dan Campbell has the toughest players that he recruits, signs. They have that mentality. Otherwise, he wouldn't want them. Graham Barton's putting them on their asses. Ben Bredesen, no one cared about, was buried on a New York Giants bad roster, bad offensive line, and comes in, and he found that diamond in the rough. The scouting department is finding diamonds, and I'm going to take Scott Reynolds' title of one of his videos. He called Jason Light a gold digger, and you know what? Baby, he is. And I'm going to close this out by saying Gene's channel here, I think it's Gene Thomas, but we all know it as Buck What You Heard is this podcast. Gene, you can find him on Twitter at Buck What You Heard. Please subscribe to his channel. And if you want to do me a favor, give him a bunch of shit if he's unable to join like he was tonight. If you want me to continue to throw on a podcast like this, I have the clear blue of nowhere. And be the lead here, and we can bring on guests like Michael Plus. We can bring on J-Lo. We'll bring in the Capos. We'll bring in the Evan Winters. We're going to give you guys, if I'm on here, you're going to have at least 1 or 2 really good guests. And I really appreciate you both hopping on here tonight. You can find me on Twitter or X at Bucs_Barrett. You can find Plus at Real Bucs Talk. And J-Lo, remind me what yours is.
No, you can find me as on JLo813 on Twitter. If you need to find me, if not Bucketeers, I'm always tagged in all the stuff. Whenever Tone promotes or Bucketeers promotes, that's where you can find me as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for hopping on with us tonight. Chat. Everyone from Richard, Gene, Jonas, T. Smitty, Christopher Cole. Appreciate all of you guys. I'm seeing right now as we're logging off, 57 of you all took time out of your nights to, listen to us, learn something new about the Bucs. And we hope that we provided you a lot of, knowledge here to help you. Maybe you get to see something during the Broncos game that you didn't see because you heard J-Lo, Pless, and I throwing, introducing maybe a new thing for you all. So I always throw up the Antoine Winfield peace sign as we sign off here. So if you guys want to join me, feel free. But everyone else, I hope you have a good night, and thank you all for hopping in. Peace.
Appreciate it.